Probably the best movie of 1991. I have no idea what else came out in 1991. Is it up against like Terminator 2 or something?
Silence of the Lambs.
Oh yeah, no, Rocketeer, hands down.
Thelma and Louise.
Oh yeah, garbage. Nothing on the Rocketeer, nothing.
It's the Flying Man.
It's the Rocketeer.
We are talking today about a show. Was this one you watched in your childhood?
It's a movie, Meredith.
Fine.
It's a fucking movie.
Let me start us over. Today, we are talking about a movie, a film. It actually was probably shot on film. So a
Had to
film
be. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
called The Rocketeer.
Great film.
1991, released in 1991 on Disney platforms.
It was released in movie theaters.
Well, Disney, okay, not platforms. Okay. There's a reason I said that. And the reason is not that I think it was streaming. The reason is that it was released as a Disney film, but then later changed to Touchstone because of this whole thing we'll get into a little bit about how it kind of like is lost in between knowing if it's a kid's movie or a teenage movie or an adult movie. So that's where my brain was.
Okay.
There was logic to it. I wasn't just
that's cool. I like that. That's neat. Thank you for that tidbit. No, okay, so we're talking about The Rocketeer. A minute ago, Meredith, you asked me if I saw this as a kid, and the answer is yes. I saw it in the theater when it came out, which was awesome. There are 3 movies from this time frame that I distinctly remember my grandmother taking me to. And not Frenchie, but my grandmother, who was a lady who wore hats, who literally wore hats and wigs because she got sunspots if she didn't wear a hat. She was like allergic to the sun or something. So
she's a vampire. She was a vampire.
She lived in the hauntedest house I ever saw as a child. So, I mean, yes, this house had secret passages. There are 3 movies that I remember her taking me to, which is interesting because I don't otherwise think of her as a person who went to the movies a lot, but it was The Rocketeer, it was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and it was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And I was born in 1983, and I think the only one, Who Framed Roger, all of these were kids movies back in ye old days at the dawn of PG-13, but like watching them now, it's like that 80s thing where you're like, oh, is this a kids movie? I'm not so sure.
This one is like, this is just post PG. This is 1991. When was PG-13 really? I know we've talked about this before, but when did that become a thing?
I think it's 88 or 89 or something like that. It was I'm pretty sure, I've heard so many movies cited as the reason that PG-13 existed, and I think it was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, or I think that George Lucas was instrumental. Lucas and Spielberg were like instrumental in getting PG-13 to happen. But like, there's a lot of movies you could cite as like PG, The Goonies, I don't know.
Yeah, actually, we're going to do an episode soon that I think will go a little deeper into this issue, but like Beetlejuice, which...
Is that PG or PG-13?
It's PG.
It's funny, I've been thinking about if my elder daughter is old enough to see it or not, and I think she might be, actually, because I certainly saw it when I was her age. I was also going to say Raiders of the Lost Ark is PG, and like full-on face-melting gore in that movie.
Yeah.
And... it was like made my dad heart sing.
Yeah, did you watch it with your kids?
I watched it with Sydney.
Okay.
I watched it with her, and I kept warning her. I was like, "It's a scary movie."
Yeah.
Okay, it's a scary movie. There's some scary stuff. I'm gonna let you know when it happens. And she is so, and she's always too. She's like, "Is there a girl in this movie? Is she tough?" That's like Sydney. Always a question.
I love that. You keep asking that question, girl.
Yeah, and I'm like, there is, and she is tough. Yeah, and she's also kind of a damsel in distress, but she's tough as hell, and she gets to be all of the things. Yeah. Leia too is tough as hell. People don't give Leia enough credit for being a boss babe.
What the hell are you doing?
Somebody has to save our skins. Into the garbage, you fly boy.
She's a real girl boss.
Leia, the boss babe.
No, but there's like multiple times in the movie when or at least one time when she's like, Luke can't even shoot straight, and she's like, "Give me that thing, you fucking loser."
Well, she gives him hell, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, not Luke. She gives Han hell as well.
Half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder. I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
Yeah,
And she becomes like a general. Yeah, Leia's a badass. Yeah, and I think
Leia's a badass.
I think
Ripley
Marion
exists.
is.
Anyway,
Oh
Marion
yeah,
is a
Ripley.
badass.
Yeah, but she is. Yeah, I mean, the first scene that you see with her, she's drinking a dude under the table. Is it a dude? Is it a
I
woman?
was gonna say,
It's a
one of my
dude.
first exposures to somebody who might be
Okay.
everyone who grew up with that movie has had that question their entire life, and I feel bad for whoever that person is because I don't think they were trying to be
No, I don't
androgynous.
think so. But
It's a trick of the light, you know.
yes, drinks a human under the table and like
Yeah.
is able to go on and have like a full
Machine gun
coherent
fight.
conversation
Oh,
with
that's true, too.
after it happens, like unaffected. So
We're
yeah,
talking
she's
about
a
the wrong
badass.
movie. All I wanted to get out here was
Were
that
you
that
talking
movie
about
is
Temple of Doom?
We're supposed to be talking about the Rocketeer. My only point is that I thought she was going to be terrified of the arc opening scene, and instead she was like, "This is fucking awesome." She didn't say that word. She's not allowed to say fuck, but she was really into it, and she wants to see as many more movies about killing Nazis as she can.
Good for her. Yeah, we this summer also watched it with my nephews who are 9 and 12, and one nephew is very self-aware of wanting to be very prepared for things. So we actually watched that scene first, just so
interesting.
and for them it's so cartoonish that it was just
Yeah.
kind of like yeah, okay, let's watch it. Like there was no question about it.
That's exactly. I mean, it's funny because like is it cartoonish now and kids are just jaded, or is it something? You know, the one thing too is that like she gets very upset if a character dies in a movie or in a story, but like baddies, like nondescript baddies, you can kill in these movies, right? And so like if Marion died,
Oh yeah,
it'd be an R-rated film at that point. You know,
Yeah.
like it changes the context. Nazis are great foils because you can kill them in kids' movies and nobody bats an eye.
Yeah, it's great. You know, we went to see Cabaret on Broadway last weekend, and this ties in, I promise. But
okay.
there's a character in Cabaret that you're kind of not quite sure what his deal is for the whole first half, and in the second half of the show, he takes off his jacket and reveals a Nazi armband, and
Yes.
it's this moment,
Yes.
and everyone in the audience just still has this like, and it's like half these people have seen it. It is just a moment of
It's become-
awe still.
Yeah, I'm also assuming that I don't know, but I feel like I've caught wind. I've noticed that the younger generation, which may have been some of those gasps, do not find it to be acceptable to display a swastika under any circumstances. That like if a character is playing a Nazi, like just don't. That is the new adaptation. That's not the Alan Cummings.
No.
one,
This
right?
is
Yeah.
Eddie Redmayne's in it. I think it opened in London. I'm not sure if he was in it in London. Anyway, it's in New York now.
Did you get the white wall at the end?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak to it, but I was blown away by the Mammoth arrangement of the story, which was the one that Cummins has revived like 3,000 times.
Where are your troubles now? Forgotten? I told you so.
Cabaret would be a great movie to cover. It's a fantastic movie.
I think the play is better.
I mean,
think-
most
I
of the
think
time
that
that's true, but
the David Mamet play is the musical by David, because the one that everybody's we're so off already. The version that everybody sees with Alan Cummings, the one that was like the version
Yeah,
of the play for 1,000 years, that was built by David Mamet, I think, in the 80s, and the movie is closer to the previous incarnation of the staged musical, and I don't like it as much. I like the David Mamet version.
okay. I mean, it'd be an interesting thing to explore. I'm sure we could find a recording of the performance and sort of go through them, but it's
gonna
one that
bring this
has
around.
to adapt with time. Yeah, bring it around. Bring it around. We are talking about
We could-
Nazis.
Bingo. We got Nazis.
We got Nazis.
We're back to the Rocketeer because we got there through Nazis.
Yep.
So the Rocketeer takes place in the 40s. It's old Hollywood. Maybe it's the 30s. Do you know exactly what year?
I think it's 38.
Because we're not in the war yet.
So one of the taglines for this movie is 3 years before the United States declares war, Cliff Seacord leads America's first battle against the Nazis.
So 37. I don't. It depends
Early
on what month it
38.
occurs in.
Yeah, now we're down to months.
Yeah. Is it a leap year? I freaking loved this movie as a kid. And I rewatched it recently, obviously. I still love this movie. I love the look of it, the feel of it, that Jennifer Connelly was in it, and just, reminding me to become a man as a child.
She's the one in Dark City as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer Connelly and Kelly LeBrock, I owe so much to them.
Until this movie, and then I didn't find her again until adulthood, I think.
Okay, yeah. I mean, like The Labyrinth.
Yeah,
as a kid was
of course,
so huge for me. And then that's really probably that, and this is probably the only movie I knew her from as a child. I wasn't watching Career Opportunities. She's very upset about the poster for that movie, by the way. She didn't like the way she was portrayed. She thought she was over-sexualized. Can you help me out with the actors in this? I know
we've got Billy Campbell as Cliff.
Billy Campbell,
is the lead character, which I feel bad for the guy, because I feel like this ruined his career, because he was
Really?
Yeah, because the way this movie kind of came to be was from the comic book. There was a very highbrow adult version of the movie being shopped around. No one was buying. Disney bought, which then started this path of and by adult I mean Jennifer Connelly's character was originally a pinup girl, that was modeled after Betty Page and was supposed to be a very Betty Page character.
That's way beyond a pinup girl. That's an S&M artist.
But that is who the character is based off of. So there was a much more adult version of the script being made.
That's much more adult.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like that version of the script and the kids' version of the script never really were always fighting each other, and found this weird sort of middle ground that didn't know if it was a kids movie, a teen movie for adults. So he was one of the casting choices that the studio really bucked against, because they wanted someone more famous. The original creators of the movie felt really strongly about Billy Campbell. So when it wasn't as popular as they wanted it to be, it was an easy place to look to say, see, we were right. You had the wrong star.
That's so. I mean, he is perfect in
I
this
think he's
movie.
perfect. I agree.
That's so stupid. How can that? I feel like everybody had to hold their nose and know that was a lie. For that to leave that room, there's no fucking way you can watch this movie and think he's what's wrong with it. There's pacing issues. I just saw Wedding Crashers. I can't think of his name. What an awful, and Swingers.
The Chicago actor Vince Vaughn.
It's fun. I love that we all have to do this dance around. How do I get my brain there? I just saw him in an interview talking about how plausible deniability basically is the most important thing in the studios right now, in that nobody wants to do, and he's talking about he was literally relating this to Wedding Crashers. He was like, you can't make that movie today because you have to have on paper proof mathematically that all the choices you're making in making this movie are good, are sound, mathematically, numerically.
Impossible.
So that if it bombs, you can go to your boss, I don't know what wrong. It must have been trolls or something. Look, I did the math. Here's the spreadsheet. This movie should have been a short thing, because people are afraid of losing their jobs, is basically what he was saying. And so it makes he's like, it sucks basically. And I feel like that's crazy. It'll be you can't make Wedding Crashers now, which is such a dumb movie to not be able to make.
Yeah.
We're
But
not talking about Citizen Kane. You can't make that for sure. But yeah, also silly comedies.
Yeah.
Those are tough.
So prove to me this will make money, but then they go and spend $200 million on a Marvel movie that makes no money because people are bored. They're so bored.
But so many of those made money, and
for so long
they have more data points that say this is good than data points that say it's bad. And I think that gravy train is now finally stopping.
You know what they should know, what we know, because we've learned it on How to Drink. Nothing stays the same. It all changes. It all continues to change.
I don't think this quote gets thrown around anymore, but Samuel Goldwyn, very famous, obviously, of Samuel Goldwyn and Mayer, Goldwyn Studios. No, Samuel Goldwyn. Yeah, he's the G in MGM.
I'm nodding because it sounds right, and I'll.
Yeah, no. Yeah. He's the G in MGM. Anyway, Metro Goldwyn and Mayer. But he said nobody knows nothing, and that was like a thing that everybody would say for years, quoting Samuel, in film school and stuff. I don't know if anybody throws that around anymore, but like nobody knows nothing. Nobody knows what's going to work or not going to work. Like they don't know. It's
Maybe you
impossible
can
to
know
decode
for
this.
like a year or two, but it's going to end. It's not going to stay. Whatever you think you know is going to change. Yeah.
I think it's an illusion. I think that you do something and it hits, and then you look back at it in retrospect and say, this is why it worked, and now I know why it worked. And you actually don't. You still don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look at Disney throwing like Star Wars at the wall and all of these things that in theory should just have an endless core audience, and they don't.
I'm going to make another quote. Disney, quality will out Walt Disney. They're basically... Don't worry about that. Just make the best fucking work you can make, and the rest will sort itself out.
Yeah. All right, back to the cast.
Anyway, back to the cast. Right. So you've got
Billy Campbell as Cliff. You've got.
Yeah, he's so good in this.
I agree.
Alan Arkin.
I'm with you. I'm a Billy Campbell stan. After this, I do. He's perfect for it.
Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, exactly. Alan Arkin is PV. Billy Campbell's right-hand man. Timothy Dalton plays Neville Sinclair.
I always can make thank you, because Timothy Dalton in my brain is always Roger Daltrey, and it's like, no, that's
also
that's the
Timothy
wrong
Dalton's a name that I know, but I looked up his filmography and I was like, this was not my stuff. I know your name.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. I mean, he's really good. Also, you would know him from Toy Story now.
Yeah, right. Well, voice actor work for sure, but his face is not really recognizable to me.
He's fantastic. I mean, he was James Bond, so.
James Bond.
I have the older Bonds. I have not gotten to them. That is something we could cover.
He's like one of the new Bonds, first off, and he only gave him, I think, two movies, and they were really controversial because the Bond movies were usually played for laughs, and his Bond was not. They were like, no, we're doing Bond through the lens of Michael Mann. It's like fucking dark.
Okay, when I say older Bonds, I mean anything pre-Pierce Brosnan.
Bond. James Bond.
I remember going to see that movie with my mom, big Pierce Brosnan fan, in the theater. That was my first exposure to Bond ever. Paul Sorvino plays Eddie Valentine.
Paul Sorvino plays Paul Sorvino.
Yeah, exactly. Terry O'Quinn plays Howard Hughes, and people are big fans of this performance.
I don't have anything wrong with the performance. Terry O'Quinn, is that a name I should know other than playing Howard Hughes in this film?
Lost. He's in Lost.
Okay. I think that what I said before was that the problem with this movie, to me, even as a child, is that it has pacing issues. As a kid, I loved this movie, but it'd be more accurate to say that I loved the idea of this movie, but it felt like it gets lost at some points. I like the pacing of it a lot better now, but as a kid, it was hard. And I think it's the Howard Hughes scenes that suffer the most from that. And I don't think that's his fault. I think that's the script.
The comic books, there's a creator of the Rocket.
Oh.
And
it's not Howard Hughes.
Oh no, it's not Howard Hughes. It's another comic book character.
Pulp magazine hero Doc Savage, but he's not Doc
Savage. Right, but in the comics it is Doc Savage.
It says right here it is not. I'm reading the wiki of the comic.
I had seen different information that it was Doc Savage, but because of licensing, they couldn't do that in the movie.
Well, yeah,
so they made
right.
it Howard Hughes.
Oh no, well this says that he's not Savage in the comic for licensing reasons. That they wanted Doc Savage, but they couldn't have him be Doc Savage.
Okay, so it was never Doc Savage, and then the movie said, "Forget all that mess." Howard Hughes. Yeah. People love Howard Hughes. We'll make it Howard Hughes.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about and also PV in the comic, it thought it was Howard Hughes' invention anyway. So that made a lot of sense. And Doc Savage is not a comic character originally. He's a pulp fiction character, which is a little bit different. He would be like in cheap novels. It's not a contemporary comic, right? It was written in 1982 and published by Pacific Comics, which is one of those other comic companies. And dark, you're right. Like, it was dark. Like, she was in girly magazines, and there's like a major character in it is apparently a pornographer.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there was a much more adult version of this story that people were hoping to make.
Yeah, and that probably I'm thinking about the same time. I don't know when Cool World came out, but like Cool World and Roger Rabbit all kind of feeding from that same trough.
I kept thinking of Dick Tracy.
That's possible. Dick Tracy. I saw that in the theater with my grandmother. That's the
Yeah.
fourth movie I saw with her in the movies at that time. I forgot about that. I love that movie, and now you
Yeah.
watch it and you're like, ugh,
Really?
this movie is
I
not great.
I wrote down while watching this movie, should we revisit Dick Tracy? And I guess the answer is no, we should
Big
not.
Red in it. Big Red in it. Big Red in it.
It's just like the merchandising around that watch has planted a seed in my brain that still makes that the coolest movie that has ever been made.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
One of Dick Tracy's junior detectives has witnessed the killer's Itchy and Flattop leaving the scene of a crime. Luckily, he's got on the Dick Tracy two-way wristwatch.
It's a true story. There was a classic car dealership near me when I was a kid growing up, and I was looking to buy like my first car, and they had a beater on the lot that was an old checker cab from the 30s. It was a Graham Nash or a Graham Rambler, I think it was, whichever it was. It was a Graham. It was either the Nash or the Rambler before or after some merger. And it was certified. It was a picture car that was used in the Rocketeer, and I wanted to buy that car so bad, but it did not run. So that was a pass for me.
But couldn't
Instead,
you
I got
fix it
my-
up? Right? Fix it up.
Somebody could have. I
Yeah.
bought a 1987 300ZX and enjoyed that car tremendously for $3,500, which was all the money I could save back then. Did you feel like this movie has like pacing issues to you, or is that just me?
Well, so I think I told you I watched this movie a lot as a kid. I don't remember loving it. I remember being kind of bored. And then as an adult, I really liked it. So
Yeah.
I'm much more patient as an adult. I think I have a lot more, like, the little details are much more interesting. The story was more interesting. So for a kid's movie, I think it has pacing issues. Again, for an adult movie, maybe not.
That might be the problem with it. It's got the vestigial pacing and meat bones of it when it was being developed as an adult's, or, a young adult film, whatever. But they made it, they de-aged the target audience. Although it's not, it's barely appropriate for kids. You know what I mean? Like, they just took the porn out of it.
They did. Yeah, right. It's
pretty violent.
It's
People
violent,
get shot to death and stuff.
right. I guess it's not too violent. I think of like other movies I watched as a kid, and we're talking about showing like Indiana Jones to your kids and stuff. So they definitely toned it down. But like, yeah, I think I can't remember if I said this before we recorded, but they re-released it under Touchstone, which is
Yeah, that's what you're
another
saying.
label that's owned by Disney, because it wasn't hitting as the kids movie they thought it was going to, or the family movie maybe, because I can't.
Yeah.
It's not like a movie that kids are going to beg to go see. It's a movie that parents are going to take kids to go see. So they tried to release it under Touchstone to make it a teen movie, and it didn't hit its mark. It just didn't. I guess in recent years, people who remember watching it as a kid have sort of revived it, which makes sense.
Yep, that nostalgia is so powerful. Point of order. Sydney also loved The Rocketeer because it involved killing Nazis.
Whenever we watch a kids movie, I am interested if Sydney liked it or not.
She was into this one.
Did she feel that
It took a lot to get her to watch it because it's a slow start, and like the first 3 times I tried to get her to watch it, she was like, what is this? And then finally I was like, will you just give it 30 minutes? And she was like, okay, wait a minute.
So what part got the okay, wait a minute, do you know?
I think that the rocket pack. I think flying around on a rocket pack was good. And also by that point, there's a Rocketeer kids cartoon show about a girl, about Seacort's granddaughter or great granddaughter who gets a rocket pack. And it's very much a kids show. Like, it is like Paw Patrol.
How do you steer this?
And so she was into that for a hot minute there. And so there was a great interest in the Rocketeer, and the character who was the great grandfather doesn't show up in it, but he does. He's a statue in the middle of the town they live in, with the Rocketeer, who is he? He was a great hero. And then she gets the rocket pack somehow, which is now pink.
Has Sydney ever watched Cars?
No, we're not a Cars household.
In that opening scene, the airfield reminded me a lot of Radiator Springs.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so I actually went into Cars to see if it was a direct.
If Cars was pulling directly.
Yeah, if it was pulling directly. I can't find any evidence that it was. But there's this still of the desert scene as you're pulling up to Radiator Springs. And I swear to God, there's a monument that is the Rocketeer wing.
You know, not for nothing, but no, it's a... it could be, but the Rocketeer, they said he looks like a hood ornament in the movie.
Uh-huh.
Hood ornaments looked like that. It was a hood ornament. They might have specifically leaned that into the
Feels
Rocketeer.
very much like very
that.
specific to his helmet. I'll put it up. We'll
But I do recall the hood ornament, the Monument Valley kind of thing with the hood ornaments. Yeah.
Yeah. But particularly like Bigelow's, the name, it looked like a sign that would be up. So I was like, maybe they reused that sign or something like that. And all I could find is that Bigelow's first name is Otis. And there is a character in Cars 2 named Otis. But that was the closest connection I could find. And I felt like a conspiracy theorist and stopped looking.
They are drawing on the same locations and time periods too.
The locations are so similar. Yeah. So
the basic premise here, and I love one of the things that I think is so cool about this, and this is actually stuff that like I would pause the movie and like give Sydney the background, because they're drawing on real rumors and stuff and Hollywood history, right? Like you've got the model for the Spruce Goose that Howard Hughes is working on, and he's like surprised it'll fly.
Son of a bitch will fly.
You've got his problems with the federal government already.
I'm sorry I ever dreamed the damn thing up.
Sir, I wish you would reconsider.
Because like he ended up getting, the reason he made the Spruce Goose fly was because he was going to go to prison for war profiteering and like stealing from the government to build the thing. And already people are like haranguing him about money and stuff in that movie. If you pay attention, you've got Neville Sinclair, who is Errol Flynn, 100% Errol Flynn, who has long been rumored to have been a Nazi sympathizer. He's doing exactly the same kind of character and sword fighting stuff that Errol Flynn was famous for in this movie.
He looks like him. He looks
he's Errol Flynn.
Like
he's just
him.
Errol Flynn. Yeah. Like it's hard. Like the name Neville Sinclair is so perfect and iconic. How could you forget it? But like in my brain, I'm always like, and Errol Flynn. And I guess in the comic, you had the Betty Page references, the Nazi Superman animation with the rocket pack men conquering the world from their flying wing bombers and stuff like that. And in the movie now, and I'm forgetting, and I should have noted this, if that is made by American Intel about the threat of the Nazi superweapon, or if it's an animation that Nazis made, looks nothing like Nazi animation, by the way. They didn't have that kind of, they just didn't have those capabilities. Looks like Disney animation, which makes sense because the movie was made by Disney.
Right.
But during World War II, Disney made war films, and a lot of them were, in fact, animated. And one of the very famous ones was Victory Through Air Power, which looks a hell of a lot like that, film reel that you're seeing right there. The Ennis House is in this movie. Neville Sinclair lives in the Ennis House. This is a very, very famous building that was built in L.A. by Frank Lloyd Wright and has been featured in lots of movies. So many movies. House on Haunted Hill, which is like, I think the first time it's used in a movie. It's referenced in Blade Runner. It's used in a really weird movie that I love that I want to get onto the show called Witch Hunt. Obviously, it's in this movie, and that's just 4 off the top of my head. I know it shows up in so many other movies. In fact, my new set is got a very subtle stretch of a reference to the Ennis House in it.
Ennis House. Does a studio own it, or is it like personally owned?
No, it's privately owned. Yeah,
Okay.
It's always been privately owned, and it's just so iconic. And it has these Neo-Mayan tile blocks that once you learn how to recognize, those are Ennis tiles, we're filming in either the Ennis House or a place that is drawing reference to the Ennis House. Yeah, Neo-Mayan revival was a thing that Frank Lloyd Wright was into for a minute. And I say Neo-Aztec because I watched a documentary about a Serbian artist who was a Serbian-American artist who wanted Neo-Aztec design to be the American mythological motif of the future. But then he went back over there and he took a lot of money from the Nazis to make stuff from them. And it's a very controversial figure. Anyway, he was good friends with Leonardo DiCaprio's weird dad, actually. And that's why Leo made a documentary about that guy. Anyway, it's a documentary called Opposition. And I think Opposition or Struggle. But yeah, and it was like he made this crazy sculpture of a hand because he was convinced that the thumb was in opposition to the fingers because they point in opposite directions, and that they hate each other and that they're always at war with each other. It's just like, what the fuck, man? That's some weird. You're onto some weird shit, and he was.
We're in like sub-layer 3, and I'm just I'm riveted. Where are we landing? Take us in, Greg.
We've got a Zeppelin in this movie that gets blown up.
Oh,
we
yeah.
love it.
Well, which I guess was based off of a Zeppelin that was actually being built but never flew. But I think this is like the realized fantasy of if this Zeppelin had ever left Nazi Germany.
Zeppelins are fucking big.
And
They're
they don't carry a
really
lot of
big.
people. Seems. Although is in Indiana Jones in the third in
They're in a Zeppelin,
Last Crusade, they're in a Zeppelin. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I think
it does
they
carry
can-
a lot of people.
A few hundred people, yeah.
Yeah.
Like you think of blimps, right? And they got that gondola on the bottom, and you figure that's the only part of it. But that's actually on a Zeppelin. That's just where the pilot sits. There's floors inside that thing.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. There's like all kinds of. Like, they had cabins and rooms and shit. Lots of
Yeah,
stuff. People had to crawl outside and work on the engines while they were flying.
That's
they were
like
crazy
a piece
idea.
of history that I understand why it doesn't exist. But if I could like step into one thing and ride it once, like a Zeppelin would be pretty high on that list.
Yeah, you'd have to be a Nazi. The Navy had a couple, but they all crashed. There was the Akron, very famously crashed in Ohio. Man, I know a lot about Zeppelins.
You
What the
do,
fuck?
yeah. There's all I know is about Zeppelins is that in the TV show Fringe, the alternate universe
Zeppelins
is a universe in which Zeppelins exist in
Yeah.
New York City.
Alternate universes fucking love Zeppelins. You want one more Zeppelin fact?
Yeah,
the
go.
observation deck at the top of the Empire State Building.
Yeah, this is what's based off of. Yeah.
It's a Zeppelin mooring station.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, just seeing like, and that's the thing. Like, here's the Empire State Building, bringing in a Zeppelin. Here is another Empire State Building at a 90-degree angle to it.
It's
like
very
they're
cool.
so fucking big.
Yeah.
You can go to the hangars that they built for Zeppelins at Lakehurst in New Jersey, where the Hindenburg blew up. It fucking rains inside that thing. That's true. Like under certain
has
atmospheric
climate.
conditions, it will rain inside the hangar.
Yeah. It's just a cool. I mean, they'll
Zeppelins.
never come back. It's never. There's no reason for them to exist.
That's
but-
not true. There's a company that's been trying to make Zeppelins happen for years. Just like
Why?
Fetch, I don't know if it will, but they've built models and stuff. Yeah, no, they're trying to bring it back because they're good at a lot of things. They're good at some things that
Are they
make
more
a lot of
climate friendly?
Kinda. I mean, because you can run them on. They don't need a huge amount of thrust. You can run them on
Yeah.
solar. Actually, they're very slow, but they.
I was
can
gonna say I
carry
can't imagine they go very fast.
fast enough. Like and the ones that they're designing is this lifting body thing, so it kind of looks like two Zeppelins next to each other. It can also, you know what it really looks like to me? It kind of looks like Betty Page's bra, because it looks like two Zeppelins right next to each other.
Good tie-in.
Yeah, good tie-in. And two great big bazongas right there in a serious piece of framework. You know what I mean? They can really hold a thing up. That's my Columbo.
You're Columbo talking about Betty Page's boobs as Zeppelin.
Yeah, that'd be a great first, like stand-up people who do like impressions that are really weird. I just go and be like, all right, for my next impression, I'm going to do Columbo talking about Betty Page's bust.
And also throwing in some Zeppelins, referring to Betty Page's bust as Zeppelins.
Yep. I think that at one time they did call that the cone bra, the Zeppelin bra. I think that there was some Zeppelin. Anyway.
Like the Madonna, Madonna bra?
Yeah. Well, that was popular in the 50s for a hot minute too.
Yeah. I mean, she exaggerated it, but that was called Zeppelins? Would she refer to it as Zeppelins? I'll do some research.
Not Madonna. No. I've heard.
If you say
don't
cone
quote
bra,
me.
if you
Don't
say
quote me.
cone bra, Madonna is the person who's going to come to mind.
Oh, not for me.
What? Who?
No. I just think of pinup girls.
Sure.
I'm straight.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I don't not think of Madonna. It's just that, in the hierarchy of things, pinup girls rank way higher than Madonna in my mind. That's all.
Fair.
Girls painted on the sides of bombers? Hell yeah. Actually, there's a great cocktail book called Bottoms Up by Ted Saucier that you can't get a color version of, but it's filled with really high quality pinup art. And I really if I had $500 I wanted to set on fire, I'd probably buy the original printing of the color version of it because it's awesome.
There you go. Let's just do an episode of How to Drink About It, which gives you a reason to buy it. And
I
then we can,
just
do
bought
drinks from
a
the episode.
reprint version because I thought there was a drink in there that wasn't in there. I specifically bought it. It was don't worry, Mary, it was $8. But yeah, $8 for the black and white reprint is fine. The color version is $400 or $500, and Can't touch it. It's like an artifact from the 50s. Anyway.
So we got to Zeppelin.
Got a scary German guy in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Well, which is another like Dick Tracy sort of reference because his face is sort of contorted like a Dick Tracy villain.
He is like a Dick Tracy character.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, he's like Flat Top. He looks almost exactly like Flat Top.
Like nearly exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It might be the same actor. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm just postulating.
I'm not going to go looking. It's fine if you don't know if we're right about that or not.
No, we can speculate. This is now a speculative fiction podcast. I have always loved, and I distinctly remember my grandmother laughing her ass off at the end of the movie when the feds and the FBI realize they're working on the same team shooting the Nazis and just kind of shrug.
I have a question for you. This might lead us into a new section of this, but on IMDb they list this as a steampunk movie.
Yeah, it's diesel punk.
Okay, what is the difference
punk.
between steampunk and diesel
Steampunk
punk?
is steampunk is going to be basically in a fantastical version of the Victorian era. Diesel punk is. Well, the Rocketeer is usually cited as the example of diesel punk.
Okay.
like if it could take place in the Rocketeer, you might call it diesel punk. Yeah.
Still not clear on the difference exactly.
Steampunk is a guy who says "milady" and practiced the katana instead of going to prom. And now he wears a top hat with gears and stopwatches on it. And he's got like a telescopic monocle and a long swooshing coat. And he's a Victorian man. He flies in a Zeppelin, but it's got a steam engine.
Okay.
You know, it's a different thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Usually in steampunk, they adhere to like the settings, like will adhere to like outdated ideas about the natural world. So like you'll have like the air is actually made of aether, and the place between the stars, why that's phlogiston, the medium through which starfire mediates. They've got all kinds of fantastical. There's a lot more fantasy in steampunk, first off, than there would be in diesel punk. Diesel punk, Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow is diesel punk. The Rocketeer is diesel punk. The internal combustion engine is an important piece of modern technology in diesel punk. It's much more grounded, and it's going to be much more 40s and 50s vibed than.
So more Art Deco, more
Deco for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas steampunk is definitely going to be Victorian. Oh,
yeah.
Perfect example. Rocketeer, diesel punk. Wild Wild West, Wiki Wild, steampunk.
Got it. Okay. And I love the look of this movie. I love the diesel punk look, I suppose, then, because it is eye candy for me all the way through. In the way where like I want to walk into Hollywood studios and I want 90% of it to feel like this.
Remember when you could see the Rocketeer's backpack at Hollywood at MGM Studios?
MGM.
I bet they still have it. I bet they, they don't do that anymore. Or do they? At the Chinese theater, they used to display artifacts, but now that it's Mickey's Runaway Railroad,
they don't.
Do they?
Yeah, the Great Movie Ride, the whole line was just artifacts. I want Disney to create like retro Disneyland, just a separate park where they take all the old rides and they just put them there. And I'll just go there for the day. That sounds great to me.
That'd be very good for me.
Yeah.
I would like
just
that.
repurpose them. But yeah, I remember walking through. I think they had a pair of slippers maybe or a dress.
One time, yeah. Well, the ruby slippers are often on display or are on display at the Smithsonian.
Yeah, they're at the Smithsonian. Well, one pair of them is at the Smithsonian.
They had, I remember, dresses from Gone with the Wind were on display at one time at the studios there in Florida.
Well, and I kept writing down like there's at least 2 instances in this movie where a plane or something flies into a truck that says gasoline across it, and I'm like, backlot tours 100%.
So this is the fact that I'm so glad you said fly. This is the thing that made me want to do this movie when I think you suggested it or I suggested it and you were like, let's do that. I was like, oh yeah, I got to drop some knowledge on her. I was watching this movie and it was like, wait a fucking minute. Watching like some of the opening sequences when he's in the race and he's getting hit in the face with oil and stuff like that. No, his shots from the cockpit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's like you get a close up on him. They have a close up on him in the cockpit flying, and then the engine bursts and it's spraying oil in his face and all that stuff. And I'm looking at that, And I know a little bit, like I've read a lot of Cinefex, and I know a little bit about special effects, and I'm like, I don't think that's fake. I don't see any matte lines. I can't even imagine how they would have faked this. And I looked it up. It's real. They built a special plane with another cockpit in it, and they had a stunt pilot in the front, and he's sitting in the back in a fake version of the plane, and they're just like dumping oil onto his fake windshield and making him fly in the back seat of this plane. And so there's like that's crazy to me, right? Like that, I think they built two of them, two special rigs to do flying scenes on. And I just, I don't know, man, that's fucking cool to me. I don't know why. Yeah. Really cool stunts in this movie. Obviously all the effects are practical, except for when Timothy Dalton falls off and blows up on the Zeppelin.
I will say that when he's flying around in the rocket pack, it always feels very chaotic. It feels, he's going very fast. It's very uncontrolled. I never, even by the end of the movie, feel like he has like a complete control over.
He doesn't.
Yeah, because this feels very much to me like a Marvel origin movie that never was an Marvel origin movie, which makes sense because the director, Joe Johnston, goes on to make Captain America First Avenger. Like, this is kind of an audition for that movie, not on purpose, but I think he was hired for that movie because of the look and feel of this movie.
Oh, I didn't realize that. But yeah, I mean, obviously this is why he got the job.
They feel like sequels.
Controversial opinion. I think Timothy Dalton makes this movie. I think he is the most important performance in this movie, and that with a close second being the guy who plays the Rocketeer, and I can't remember his name now.
Billy Campbell.
I'm thinking about all of my favorite scenes in this are probably Timothy Dalton's scenes. I don't know there was another person working at that time who could have done this role.
For me, he wasn't someone I see all the time. And yes, he's got this like this handsomeness, this creepy handsomeness. I don't know, like that he pulls
so
off
sinister.
very well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's from the first time you see him, I guess, I was going to say, he's going to be a bad guy, but I don't think that was true for me. I actually think that he doesn't feel that threatening or that sinister until she's in his house. Well, I guess, okay, I'm saying this and now I'm remembering the reason it's going to go bad is because he's drugged her with chloroform and brought her to his house. So, yeah, it's not great.
Listen, dating is different than it was in my day. Yeah. What else can I say? I mean, I seem normal to me. Yeah.
So elegant.
You make it so. Here's to you.
I had the absolute pleasure of going to the Tropicana Lounge in Cuba. We took a very seedy ride from a local through Havana to get to this place. And when we got there, for every two people, they put a bottle of Havana rum on the table, and you just saw the most fantastic show of showgirls in costumes, and it felt they gave every man a cigar. Like, it just like felt very like walking into this moment in history in particular. It was really cool.
That club is the South Seas Club. There are references to it. The menus and stuff for it are up on the wall at Trader Sam's Grog Grotto at Disney World.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's all kinds of references to all that stuff. And like the Diz, he's like, I don't know if he's the head bartender there, but Dr. Diz, but he's one of the bartenders there at the very least, the skippers. And he was walking me through all of the, like, explaining how, like, but this brings the South Seas Club and the Adventurers Club that used to be at Downtown Disney and the Jungle Cruise and Grog Grotto and all of these places into a singular shared universe that connects back to Disney Sea, SEA, the something Explorers something, which is a park that they built in Tokyo and everything like that. And so it's all like one shared kind of pulp adventurer universe that Disney has that I don't know if anybody really is aware of.
Yeah, well, it feels like there's a group of people who wanted this aesthetic to really be like a shining, like MGM used to feel like this movie to me. Maybe that's why I love it so much, is that that's how I remember MGM feeling as a whole.
I mean, there was a whole swing revival.
Yeah.
Right. Like through the mid 90s, from the early 90s onward till about the late 90s, swing was a thing. I went to swing lessons with a girl.
I learned how to swing dance. There was the Gap commercial with Brian. What was
Brian Setzer and the Stray Cats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jump, Jive, and Wail.
The Big Bad Voodoo Daddies. The Cherry Poppin' Daddies. Those are two different bands. they
Okay.
existed. Yeah.
The Cherry Poppin' Daddies.
I
From
think
what
they had
year?
in the 90s, like
Okay.
97.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Like Zoot Suit Riot. I don't know if
No.
that was Big Bad Voodoo or Cherry Poppin'.
I thought that was Bryant. No?
No.
Okay.
He was famous for his cover of Jump Jive and Wail.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier than that, he had an original called Stray Cat. Stray Cat something. It's a weird tune. I'm not a fan.
I'm in junior high again right now, taking
Nope.
dance classes on Friday night.
How's that going for you? How's it going
was
being back in
so
junior
fun.
high? Are you gay yet?
No. Well, no. I have a big crush on, oh my gosh, so many people.
You're gonna say a dude. I'm immediately gonna be like, well, you're gay.
No, not a dude. Who is my, oh gosh, I have a big crush on Itchy Threadgood from Fried Green Tomatoes.
Oh yeah, okay, that's right.
Or
You've
not
told
a
me about
crush.
that.
I actually have a big, no, wrong. I have a big crush on Mary Louise Parker because I feel I am Itchy Threadgood from Fried Green Tomatoes, which was my favorite movie.
Baseball movie. That's got to do it. For
Oh,
you.
A League of Their Own, 100%.
Yeah.
We'll
That's
get
actually a
into
great
that when we
movie.
talk about Gina Davis
That's just a
in
great
an
movie.
upcoming episode.
Yeah, Gina Davis. I wonder if she could have done. Sometimes I just like to think about alternate casting. No, I don't think so. I can see
Jennifer
her.
Connelly has
She's pretty perfect.
just the softest. She just has the most 40s looking face.
She does have it.
She has it.
She's an it girl.
Yeah.
She got it.
Also, League of Their Own. Here's a real loose tie. The dad, Marla Hooch's dad, is in this movie in the bar scene. He is.
Yes,
He's the
is.
one who Jennifer Connelly's
He's
character.
the pilot with the shakes.
That her boyfriend is doing dangerous stuff, almost dying out there.
Yeah, that's right. He almost died, and he didn't want her.
To know, and he breaks it. So that's
Real
him.
stoic fella.
Also, Margot Martindale, I think, like, she's always
She
worth
the lady
mentioning.
who runs the place?
Yeah, Millie. She's always worth mentioning when she comes up because that woman is absolutely everywhere for the last 50 years.
Yep, she was great. She is great.
We didn't really talk about the ending. Like, there's a big battle at the end. You find out, we keep talking about Timothy Dalton as the bad guy, and one of the reasons is when she's been brought to his house, she wanders into the room, or he throws her into the room where all of his Nazi paraphernalia is.
She finds his secret radio room.
Yeah, she
And
finds
that's
it.
how
Okay.
Yeah, and it's full of, well, a radio that's connected to a German submarine, first off, and also a bunch of Nazi stuff.
Yeah, and then we're kind of off to the races after that.
And he's planning on escaping to Germany with his rocket pack.
So that they can have an army of Rocketeers.
Yeah, which is interesting because I don't think Errol Flynn, I don't think a lot of American Nazi sympathizers in real life wanted to escape to Germany. I think that they were living it up in America, being rich usually. They just wanted to Germany to win. But you get escaped to living in Germany. Even if you're for it, it's kind of like not so great, especially if you're like a Hollywood actor and you got a whole career.
There was a group of people who were kind of hoping that ideology was coming this way. Like, there was a huge
Not a group of
rally.
Huge amount of people.
Yeah. I was going to say, there was a
Huge amount of
huge rally
people.
at Madison Square Garden, famously, that was...
Amongst many.
yeah.
The German-American Bund had clubs all over the place in the U.S. Did you ever see The Plot Against America?
Mm-mm.
So good. Miniseries that I can never remember his name, but he's the guy who did The Wire. Did based on a famous novel by a guy whose name I can't remember. Just put him on screen or something. And it's about
David Simon.
if Charles Lindbergh became president instead of FDR. And it doesn't go well for anyone.
It was a mini-series? What's it called?
6 episodes. Yeah, it's called The Plot Against America.
Plot Against... That sounds... I mean, I love The Wire. I love David Simon.
Yeah, he's so good.
Maybe
I
we should
love
just
how
cover that because I want to watch it.
Authentic his dialogue is and how real it feels always. Yeah, huge cast in that.
Yeah.
John Turturro and others.
Sounds like a better version of For All Mankind, like the alternate history.
I hate For All Mankind. So
Have you watched it? Really? Have you watched more than the first couple episodes?
I can't get through the first episode.
Okay,
I just
yeah.
don't like it.
I felt the same way.
There's something about that guy I don't.
Sure. Okay, I can understand that too. he kind of is perfect for that role, unfortunately, because I think you're kind of supposed to feel that way. But when I was pregnant, I was trying to watch something that Ray had no interest in because she was working,
I don't want you around.
Well, no, they were working a job that was like 2 p.m. to midnight at that point. So I was home alone a lot. And so For All Mankind was exactly that show. And I got into it. And once I got into it, it was great, especially for women. There's a lot. It's a lot. So eventually, so what happens is, okay, real quick. I'm going to give you this in like 30 seconds because the space race goes to the moon race is won by the Soviets. It kicks off this sort of tit for tat. So the Soviets put a woman on the moon first. So it becomes a lot about women. The Americans needed to do the same. So this like sort of
the Soviets might do
equality of women taking their place in that part of society happens in that show, which then builds into something that is really awesome to watch for me.
And then they shoot at each other on the moon.
They do eventually do that, yes. But everyone knows it's ridiculous and stupid. It's not like
shoot at each other on the moon?
Yes. It's not like something that the show treats as like, oh, this is just this. Now we have war on the moon. Like
moon war.
It's a total accident when it eventually happens. And it's like, of course, someone's going to put a gun up there. And of course, it's going to go wrong. And I think it's actually handled really well. Anyway, good show. Actually, I really enjoy it. But I agree. It took me like 4 or 5 times watching the first episode to like break through that point.
Okay.
And had I never been pregnant, I don't think I ever would have.
Gotcha.
So under very specific circumstances, I made it through, and now I'm very happy.
Next time I'm pregnant, I'll give it a shot.
I think that's the exact time that you should try it again.
Cool.
One more thing about this movie that comes up a ton that I was going to talk about earlier in the episode because it is like everything I watched that talks about any sort of trivia about this movie has to bring up this fact. But the studio really wanted to change the helmet of the Rocketeer to a more spaceman helmet. They wanted to be able to see the Rocketeer's face, and Joe Johnston basically was like, if you do it, I'm done. I'm not doing the movie. I quit. Yeah. And I think the only, in my opinion, I have nothing to back this up besides my opinion, but I think that the reason he won that fight is because why Disney bought this movie was merchandising. They saw action figures and they realized if you show his face, you got to pay one more guy licensing fees. And if you don't show his face, we don't have to. And I think that's why he won that battle at the end of the day. I think they would have happily replaced him.
Maybe. I mean, the toy's going to have a removable helmet.
It doesn't, though. From the versions I've seen, and I've seen a bunch that have been shown. I have never seen a version that has a removable helmet. We would have had a spaceman version of the Rocketeer. I don't know if it would have gone better or worse for them. It wouldn't have been the Rocketeer anymore. I feel like it couldn't have been.
Yeah, it would have been awful.
Yeah. Speaking of alternate universes, that's one that I'm glad that we did not have to live through.
The wrong Rocketeer.
Yes.
What a tragedy that would have been had we grown up with the wrong Rocketeer.
Epic tragedy.
Why even bother going on? You know, what's the point?
All of human history has been altered and it has been ruined.
Yeah, the only difference from our time travel endeavors has been to alter the helmet that the Rocketeer won. And frankly, I'm going to end it all. I'm done.
Well, one more thing that I have in my notes, which now I'm just spewing out trivia at the end of this episode. But I guess that Disney had a special mechanism built for this movie called the shaky cam. It was designed as the exact opposite of the steady cam. Introduced to add vibrations into the picture. They used it for the scenes inside of the Zeppelin.
Vibrator to the camera.
It sounds like the dildo cam.
Yeah, or like just like a motor with an eccentric weight on it or something like that. Yeah, that's sensible.
So that's it.
I've seen rigs where you just like take a grip arm and attach it to the camera, and you have a grip like smack it while you're operating on your shoulder. Like that works. It
sounds like a really pleasant work day. Just like, stop hitting me.
All right. That is Midnight Local, and it's available wherever you get your podcasts. And today we talked about the Rocketeer.
The Disney movie that could have been something else, but it is a Disney movie.
Could have been a whole franchise.
Could have been. I think maybe there's no one's talking about bringing this back. So
No, they are. They're always talking
I mean,
about it, reviving it.
But
I'm sure
it
it's
is
being
like
talked about.
when they made Captain America. I mean, like, is it that different?
It's a lot different. Yeah. And I think you can go closer to the comic, and I think that you have all this nostalgia. Boomers had nostalgia for Captain America. Like, millennials have nostalgia for the Rocketeer, because we grew up with that. They grew up with him.
You heard it.
Good night.
You heard it here first. Rocketeer is coming back.
I don't know about that. I just said I'm sure it's being discussed. I can guarantee that.
The Rocketeer is being discussed.